Hi, in this video, I'll be covering inhalation. The voice is basically a wind instrument in that our fuel is air. So the way that you breathe in has a huge effect on your singing. If you'd like to be able to hold long notes or sing up and down comfortably, inhalation is key to doing all of that. So we're going to go over the body parts that you need to engage to inhale the most efficiently in this section. Best singer in the world exercise. Do you remember the best singer in the world exercise from the stance section, if you watched that section? If you did, you're already familiar with this and you might know where this is going. If not, just bear with me. I'd like you to stand in front of a mirror and pretend that you are the best singer in the world. You're going out on stage to give a special performance to all of your millions of fans. So you're going to stand well in front of that mirror, and then while watching yourself carefully, I'd like you to take a few breaths the way that you would breathe in order to start singing. A couple of things to note here. Are there parts of your body that are moving? Are there parts of your body that are not moving? Is there anything in particular you're trying to accomplish as you breathe in places that you're trying to put effort into or other places that you're trying to keep still? Consider all of that, and then take a look at what I look like when I breathe to sing. Note any differences here between what you did and what I'm doing. Muscles of inspiration. Inspiration is just a fancy word for inhalation. So your lungs, you probably know, are your main respiratory organ, but your lungs are basically just two bags. They can't really do anything themselves, and they need the help of muscles to help them inflate. So the muscles of inspiration or of inhalation are the muscles that do that. You may have heard of this first one, the diaphragm. A lot of people have heard the term diaphragm. They know they're supposed to sing from the diaphragm, but they're not exactly sure what that means. So we're going to demystify that for you here. The diaphragm is the main muscle of breathing. It's this basically flat barrier that's located in between your thorax, or your chest, where your lungs are located, and your abdomen, the bottom part of your torso, where there are a lot of gooey muscles of digestion, like your stomach, your intestines, all that good stuff, right? So your diaphragm, when you are at rest, is in a relatively high-ish lumpy position here. And then as you breathe in, the diaphragm flattens and lowers. What that does is it creates a vacuum in your lungs, which then fill with air in response as the thorax portion of the torso gets larger and the abdomen portion of the torso gets smaller. So it's basically a volume displacement that is caused by those lungs, if you can picture that. We may not be able to see the diaphragm at work, but we can see the secondary movement caused by the diaphragm, which is our bellies going out. You probably see that here as I breathe. My belly moves out when I breathe, and that's because that diaphragm is moving down, creating a displacement of volume, and all of those gooey organs that I mentioned earlier have to move out of the way. The rectus abdominis, or your 8-pack abs, have to relax so that can all move forward. There's a lot of more like muscular, structural stuff happening in the back. Your rib cage extends farther in the back, so things have to move forward when you breathe diaphragmatically. The other component of this is, like I said, the rectus abdominis, your 8-pack abs, like if you work out and you're trying to get abs, those have to be relaxed for you to inhale. Go ahead and tense your abs and try to take a deep breath in. It makes me feel sick. It might make you feel sick. The body just doesn't work well that way. So make sure that that's all nice and loose as the diaphragm engages so you can get that comfortable, full breath. Now, for some people, getting that diaphragmatic low belly breathing motion is a lot harder than it sounds. A lot of people actually try to suck their stomach in and kind of puff up their chest when they breathe. And that is partially because I think we're always told to like suck it in and try to look skinnier. But for singing, you just have to relax those abs, low breath, and let it all hang out nice and proud.
Diaphragmatic breathing exercises.
Here are some exercises to help you to find that low breath, that diaphragmatic breath, if you're having some trouble with it.
Diaphragmatic mapping.
Now, as singers, we can't actually see the diaphragm, but you can picture it by doing what I just did. So if you take your hands like this is relatively the shape of the diaphragm at rest, put it right here. You should feel ribs underneath. You should feel ribs underneath the backs of your hands here, and then take a deep breath in, lowering and flattening that diaphragm. You should be able to map the motion of the diaphragm and get an idea of what's going on in your body when you breathe.
Belly breathing.
Go ahead and take your hand, put it on your belly. Right on your belly button, I would recommend, and then breathe in, trying to push your belly out.
Straw breathing.
Imagine that you're sucking air through a straw directly into your belly button. You can make a sucking noise as you breathe this way and keep your hand on your belly so you can feel the movement. As you do that, do your best to keep your neck and all of the other peripheral areas relaxed. You're just making the sucking sound to help you to get that low breath and then wean yourself off of that.
Use your instrument.
Here's something special for those of you who play guitar or bass or another instrument that goes flush against your torso. When you are playing, try using your instrument to remind yourself to breathe low, to breathe diaphragmatically by pushing your instrument out with your belly as you breathe.
The intercostals.
The diaphragm is the muscle of inhalation that most people talk about, but it's not the only one. There's another one that I want to tell you about because it has a really big effect on the rib cage. Your intercostals are located in between your ribs, and your rib cage goes all the way around your torso, all the way to the back. It extends a bit farther down in the back. You've got a couple floating ribs back there, and your diaphragm, as a result, is sort of tilted up and forward. So if you picture seeing somebody from the side, the front of the diaphragm is going to be slightly higher and the back of the diaphragm is going to be slightly lower to follow that curvature of the rib cage. The rib cage itself does move a little bit thanks to the diaphragm, but a lot of the rib cage movement is because of the intercostals, which are, like I said, located in between those ribs. To map the movement of the intercostals, I don't want to tell you exactly what they do right away. I want you to try to figure it out. So go ahead and take your hands like this and put them around your rib cage. So your fingers are around the front and your thumb goes to the back. Relax your shoulders and neck and take a couple of deep breaths. What do you feel your rib cage doing? When I do this, if this is the rib cage at rest when viewed from the top, I feel this happening. It's a sort of out and up motion, And the special thing about this motion is that it's not just happening in the front, where that diaphragmatic motion is the most visible. It's happening all the way around the torso. If you've ever heard the term back breathing, that's referring to intercostal movement, right? So in order to get that full breath, you really have to have the diaphragm and the intercostals working together.
Intercostal exercises.
To try to get your intercostals to move, I recommend you use your hands just like I just did. So put those hands back around your rib cage and try to push them out and up in all directions, really focusing on that thumb in the back. That's the part that most people have trouble with if they have trouble with this. Another exercise that's really great for intercostal motion is the meditative exercise that I mentioned in the previous module. If you lie down in that sit-up position, your rib cage, the back of your rib cage, should be more or less flat against the floor. And as you breathe, if you're able to engage the back of the rib cage, you will feel it pushing against the floor. It's a pretty interesting sensation.
Putting it together.
In order to get that full singer's breath, you have to have your intercostals and your diaphragm fully engaged when you breathe in. Using your hands, I believe, is the easiest way to do this. So you can put one hand on your belly button, one hand on one side of your rib cage, and try to get that out and up motion in your rib cage hand and that out and down motion in your belly button hand, while keeping the rest of your torso neutral. Another great exercise for this is, again, that floor exercise. If you're working on this on the floor, feeling your rib cage pushing into the floor and then putting one hand on your belly button to feel the diaphragm engaging is one way that you can do this. You can also put one hand on your side to feel the intercostals. Some people recommend putting a book or another object on your stomach so you can feel it moving up and down and know that you're getting your diaphragmatic engagement.
Breathing movements to avoid.
When you were looking in the mirror when you did your best singer in the world breath, if you're like many people, you might have noticed movement in your head, your neck, your shoulders, or your chest. Like I mentioned, a lot of people pull up on the shoulders and chest and pull in with the stomach muscles or with the abdominal muscles when they're breathing. And a lot of that can actually make it difficult to get a full breath, and it can have other ill effects on the singing process. This breathing that I just demonstrated with the chest and the shoulders moving up and the abdominals sucking in, some people call it high breathing. It's associated with specific activities. So if you work out really hard and you're anaerobic, you might find that you're breathing up higher here. People who have anxiety, if they're having a panic attack, people tend to breathe up there. It's also associated with shallow, faster breathing. So again, if you're thinking about a panic attack, somebody's breathing a lot more frequently than they would when you're taking normal, lower, deeper breaths. You can probably see why this type of breathing is not desirable when you're singing. Obviously, you want to be calm and not feel anxious when you're singing. Breathing high in the chest is activated by the fight or flight response. That's why when people panic, they tend to breathe up here. Conversely, breathing up here can sort of exacerbate things and make you nervous. By breathing lower with the diaphragm and the intercostals and keeping your chest and shoulders out of it, you can actually help yourself to feel calmer about singing and alleviate some stage fright, which everybody gets some stage fright once in a while. Another thing is that with that high breathing, when you're activating, especially you're activating your rectus abdominis, you're just not going to be able to fill those lungs all the way. Even though, yes, the lungs are located in the chest. Like I said, think of them as a vacuum. You have to activate those muscles of inhalation in order to fill them, and you just can't do that by activating the upper chest and shoulders. One interesting fact about the shoulders is that the collarbone here is connected to your shoulder bones. Underneath it is your rib cage. So the shoulders are actually not even connected to your rib cage at all, to the respiratory system at all. So unless you're really heaving, there's no anatomical reason why your shoulders should move up or down when you breathe. If you have trouble grasping that concept, try the meditative lying down breathing. You'll find that it's very difficult to move your shoulders when you breathe in a lying down position. Finally, when you are singing with a high breath, you are activating muscles in your neck, often in your face and your shoulders, that we'll get into this more, but you really do want to keep this area as relaxed as possible when you sing. So that's going to create ill effects and tension. That's going to make it harder for you to sing efficiently, for you to have much stamina. So just keeping everything nice and low is generally a good idea.
Body parts to relax when breathing.
With that in mind, here are some body parts that you might want to pay attention to as you learn how to inhale and make sure that those are relaxed. I do want to mention that it doesn't really matter whether you're breathing out of your mouth or your nose. If it is dry out, you might want to breathe out of your nose because your nostrils can help to humidify your breath. If you need to take fast breaths during songs, you're going to want to breathe out of your mouth. So it's important to practice both. But as you figure out diaphragmatic and intercostal engagement, just do whichever feels comfortable for you. The interior throat muscles and the vocal folds. Inside of your throat or your pharynx, you have these things called pharyngeal constrictors that squeeze to help you swallow. They go the opposite way if you have to throw up. And of course, you have your vocal folds, which help us make vocal sound. If you engage your pharyngeal constrictors or you bring your vocal folds too close together when you're breathing in, you're going to end up with a noisy breath like this. In order to avoid that, think about relaxing the inside of the throat, opening those vocal folds up. Just picture everything loose and relaxed. You can drop your jaw if that helps. And make sure that that breath is completely silent. If everything is loose, you should be able to do that silent breath. External neck muscles. Your external neck muscles are generally involved in moving your head and your neck around. You don't need to activate them in order to breathe. Look in the mirror as you do this and make sure that as you inhale, it doesn't look like anything is popping out. The shoulders. If you find that you're moving your shoulders a lot when you breathe, remind yourself that they don't need to move. Watch yourself in the mirror, make sure that they stay still. You can also kind of weigh them down. I've had students who have worn a heavy backpack to help them. You can hold something in your hands, such as hand weights, to help keep those down. You can also hold on to the lip of a piece of furniture, like a desk, to weigh down those shoulders and then wean yourself off of that as you get better at breathing without that high torso movement. The chest. Again, watching in the mirror for that chest movement as you breathe, making sure it's not happening. Weighing your chest down by placing a hand on your sternum. You can kind of push down with your arm, use the weight of your arm to keep that chest from moving. This is also helpful because you can feel your chest moving, and that's a great reminder to not move it. Your rectus abdominis, or your abdominal muscles. Remind yourself that those muscles need to be relaxed and the belly needs to be moving out and not in when you breathe. One thing that can help is visualizing that diaphragmatic motion, like I demonstrated earlier with the hands, or using your hands on your belly and pushing that belly out as you breathe.
Miscellaneous.
You'll find that a big theme in singing is that we don't want to do any extra work. We want to be as lazy as possible and just do the work that we need to do and nothing else. Looking in the mirror can help you to get rid of these habits now before we get deeper into the learning to sing process, so you don't have to worry about that later when you're practicing more complicated techniques.
General breathing exercises.
Here are some general inhalation activities that I recommend.
Breathing during your day.
Just like with stance, you can incorporate practicing inhalation into your day. Obviously, you have to breathe all day. So anytime you have a second, pay attention to how you're breathing and see if you can take some really deep, low, silent breaths without incorporating your upper chest, shoulders, etc. If you have a job or you're in school or something, if you're involved in activities that require a lot of talking, like say if you work at a call center or in customer service, or maybe you're in school and you have to give presentations, things like that, try breathing like this when you're doing those activities and talking. It will help to increase your speech stamina, and it might actually make it easier for you to be heard and to speak comfortably as you're doing those things. Wall sit. This is a good intermediary step between lying down and standing up fully. Obviously, you don't want to be fully muscularly exerting yourself. This isn't a gym class. So try to go for like a 160-degree angle or so between your thighs and the floor. Make sure that the small of your back is on the wall as you do this so you can feel your ribs pushing against that wall as you breathe.
Long breath.
This involves taking longer to breathe than usual. Inhale for a count of 5 seconds using a timer, expanding more and more each second. Be careful as you do this not to breathe so much that you become tense or start getting a lot of chest and shoulder movement. So focus on expanding down low for that full diaphragmatic and intercostal engagement.
Surprise breath.
A lot of songs don't leave you with much time to breathe. They might be really fast with a lot of lyrics, or they might have super long phrases with not a lot of break in between. Whatever the case, sometimes we have to breathe deeply and quickly. The surprise breath is a technique that helps you to do that. To do it, place one hand on your belly and one on your rib cage like we've been talking about. Drop your jaw and pretend that you've just seen a spider and that you're really scared of spiders. This allows you to fully expand while keeping this whole area nice and loose and not taking very much time. If you find that you're getting a lot of sound when you do this, simply get the same sensation while feeling that open throat feeling. Make sure that those vocal folds are far enough apart that this is a silent exercise.
Lie down.
Lying down. That meditative posture is just excellent for practicing inhalation. When you're doing this, get that mat and a book about an inch thick. Put the book underneath your head and bend your knees so it looks like you're about to do a sit-up, trying to get the small of your back pretty close to or on the mat. Put a hand on your belly and practice breathing so your ribs press against the floor in the back and your belly moves up and down. I've included a special video with this course that covers stance and breathing meditative singing. So after you're done watching this video, you can go ahead and use that one to guide you as you practice these two areas on the mat.
Breathing well when singing.
Obviously, practicing breathing when you're not singing is really important, but you also have to practice breathing like this when you are singing. You have to connect the dots. As you're doing this, there are a couple of concepts that I'd like you to keep in mind.
Avoid stacking air.
Stacking air is what happens when you breathe in too deeply and you're not using all of your air as you sing. You inhale a full breath, you use maybe half the breath, and then you breathe again. And before long, your lungs are full of this old air and you're having to blow it out in between phrases, and it's just awkward. This requires a lot of coordination, but the best singers breathe in as much as they need for a phrase. So if you have a short phrase, only breathe in as much as you need to sing the phrase. If you have longer phrases, higher phrases, phrases that require more air, maybe they're louder, breathe in more so that you can make it through those phrases. But make sure that you're not stacking all this old air in there and making it impossible for yourself to get new air and oxygenate your body as you sing.
Plan your breaths.
When you're learning a song, it's a really good idea to plan your breaths, especially if it's a song that you're having some difficulty with breathing-wise. Maybe you find that you're running out of breath in certain places. Print off the sheet music or a lead sheet or just the lyrics for the song, or grab a tablet and a stylus so you can write on it there are many apps that support that. Personally, I use Fourscore on my iPad to take notes. Once you've got something to take notes on, mark in your breaths. Usually breaths occur at punctuation. So if you've got a period, an exclamation point, a comma, those are all fair game. For breaths, you don't have to breathe at all of them, but they're good options. Also, anywhere that you would stop when you are speaking. So if you're not sure where your breaths should go, read and find where your natural pauses are. Those are good spots for breaths. You don't want to breathe in the middle of a word. You don't want to breathe in a place where it would feel awkward if you were speaking the text.
Don't be late.
When you are singing a song, here's a couple of additional guidelines. Make sure that you always come in on time. It's okay to cut off a note in order to breathe, but it's not okay to come in late. It makes it sound like a little bit messy, and it can make your collaborators, if you're singing with a pianist or a band, it can make people feel like you don't know what you're doing. So make sure that you are coming in on time and you're making breathing decisions that help you to come in on time. Don't wait until the last second to breathe. A lot of people do this. I've noticed that a lot of singers wait through a long introduction and then breathe in the split second before they have to come in. There's no reason to torture yourself by doing that. Breathe when you have time. Take advantage of that time. One image that I use to help people with this is imagine that all of your rests are filled with air, like big bubbles, and you're breathing through all of those. If you're having trouble getting enough air, remembering to breathe in the time that you have, that can really help you to get those full breaths that you need to sustain yourself through a song without feeling like you're struggling for air. Inhalation is foundational to singing. It is the fuel of singing. So really drill down and spend the time that you need to master this skill, connecting it with the singing that you're doing right now so you can get those full breaths that you need to get through a song comfortably. In the next module, we'll be talking about what happens immediately after that inhalation, the vocal onset or the start of the sound.